What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Check the Kick podcast. I'm your host, Devin. Show can be found on Sherdog.com. It's a pretty cool website. You should check it out. It's all over the place on all the other streaming platforms as well. Glad to be back. Second show of the new year. Pretty decent UFC Apex card to kick things off in January of 2024, but we're moving over to Canada coming up this weekend for UFC 297. Not the biggest pay-per-view, but there's definitely some hype behind the main event. Pretty cool stuff to talk about from UFC Vegas 84. If you see me in a hoodie, it's because it's been cold as shit where I am. I live up in the northwest part of the country, and we had negative 26-degree wind chill. So probably no matter where you're from, that's cold as shit. Average temperature this weekend was probably about negative 5 degrees Fahrenheit. I know they go by Celsius, our brothers to the north, but we're here in the greatest country and we talk Fahrenheit here. We talk Fahrenheit here. We use Fahrenheit here. Sorry, if I'm going to say something like that, I should at least articulate it in a proper way. It's neither here nor there. Got some fights to talk about. Happy to be back with you guys again. We're just going to jump right into Bautista versus Ricky Simón. Bautista defeats Ricky Simón via 3-round decision in a semi-close-ish fight. A quick sip of water. Apologize about that. Bautista looked really good here. He looked really, really good. Simón was favored going into this fight. This was definitely a coming out party for Bautista. He was unranked. Ricky Simón, I believe, was number 13 in the UFC rankings. And outside of him getting, a lot of people scored the first round for Simón. Upon rewatch and after really thinking about it, I definitely think Bautista won. I think he did kind of get dropped at the end of that first round. However, it was more of him throwing a knee, him being unbalanced, and Ricky Simón landing a perfectly timed shot. And I think it was more of, it wasn't one of those shots where you're so concussed you can't stand. It's more of you got hit hard enough, not on balance, with only one foot on the ground, and just the sheer force of the punch knocked him to the ground. But Bautista, able to easily recover. He went back to his corner and he goes, "Hey, I'm not throwing that knee anymore." Because that's what got me caught. And this was a close fight. Bautista just went out there and he really showed everyone that he can be tough, have good volume, great punching combinations. The last half of the third round told me everything I need to know about him. You look at Ricky Simón's fight with Merab and we all know what kind of cardio maniac Merab is and the kind of game that he employs with that cardio. And Bautista was out there overworking Simón in the third round, and Merab was not overworking Simón in the third round of their fight. I think we have reached the ceiling for Ricky Simón unless something does really change for the dude. Tough to stay because I didn't pick this fight on the show, but I was kind of on leaning Simón in this fight. I just, Bautista can be out wrestled, and he has given up takedowns in the past, and his takedown defense was immaculate here. The second his back would touch the cage, he would not allow Ricky Simón to lock his hands. Second his back touched the cage, just digging the underhooks, trying to break the grips. Third round, he did get taken down. Ricky Simón picked him up, ran him across the cage, and took him down in front of his own corner. I think in 2024, obviously in 2023, this would have been the same. I think the high amplitude, bringing people up way over their head and taking them down is just, people are too good to rely on that as a main weapon for them anymore. Like, Ricky Simón picked up Mario Bautista in a round that he was clearly winning, picked him up, ran him across the cage, slammed him in front of his own corner, and then just gassed out and started getting pieced up because Mario Bautista was able to get right back up. What if he were to just go for the easy takedown, take him down right there in that spot? Yeah, you're not in front of your corner, but then you may be able to actually employ some control. I think him picking him up and running him across the cage again and slamming him to the ground kind of partially blew his load. And good on Mario Bautista for, noticing that and just upping the volume. His combination boxing was great, busted up Ricky Simone, and he had tons of success, really through the whole fight with just his combination striking. His knees looked good. His takedown defense was great. His pressure looked good. His shot selection looked good. His jab looked good. Everything he did was great. Maybe if he could employ a couple more head kicks, that'd be something to add to his arsenal, but that he's good. A lot of wins coming in, and he's lost really the only guys he's lost to Corey Sandhagen. Corey Sandhagen's great. And this, I put this tweet out, and I believe Sherdog retweeted it, that after this win by Mario Bautista, it kind of clearly shows that bantamweight is just the deepest and best division, in MMA right now. And when I say that, I mean, you look at lightweight would probably be the other competitor to that, and go pull the top 15 at lightweight and the top 15 at bantamweight. And, you look at someone like Mario Bautista, even though he is a training partner of Sean O'Malley, those guys probably go to war in the gym. Where on the other hand, you have Islam Makhachev as a champion at 55 and someone like Grant Dawson that was just in the top 15. And what do you think Islam Makhachev would do to someone like Grant Dawson? Look what Islam Makhachev did to someone like Bobby Green. And that's what I mean. Lightweight is the second best division in MMA, but guys that are, ranked 15 in the world at bantamweight could probably have a tough fight or beat the champion today. And it's all interchangeable at 55. You could, as much as we all love our Dustin Poiriers and our, Justin Gaethjes and those dudes are not going to have hard fights with the champion. It's bantamweight's just so good. I mean, guys like Umar Nurmagomedov are there. Chris Gutierrez, decent fight by him last time out. But yeah, bantamweight is just really, really deep. And I think for Mario Bautista, someone like Jonathan Martinez would be a very fun fight. They are both just getting into the rankings. Jonathan Martinez, I think they're both on 6-fight winning streaks as well. So someone's, winning streaks got to go at this point. Jonathan Martinez, just an incredible leg kicker, possibly one of the top 5 leg kickers in the UFC. Definitely one of the best in that division. He's just a dynamo. Song Yadong he called out Rob Font, and I like that call out. I think that actually also makes a lot of sense. Song Yadong is fighting Petr Yan. He could have reached for the stars and called out the loser of that fight, but I think the loser of that fight, or the winner, may be pushed into an Umar Nurmagomedov type fight. Yeah, bantamweight's great. And for Ricky Simone, I just kind of feel bad for the guy. He's coming off of 2 losses where he had a semi-close-ish fight where his last 2 fights have kind of looked the same, where he's in the fight, but you can tell he's just not good enough to keep up with the dude that, he's matched up against, where Song Yadong ended up finishing him late into the fight. And he had moments against Song Yadong, but it was never really enough to, put the cherry on top. And same thing for Bautista here. He just, as good as Simone looked here, he just kind of flat out lost 70% of the exchanges in this fight. And you can't do that in bantamweight. The division's just too good. Coming off of 2 losses, he's going to probably get kicked way back, and he may be stuck fighting someone like Adrian Yanez, who's another really tough dude that's, had some surgeries and had some issues coming off a couple losses. But yeah, we'll see what happens to Ricky Simone in the future. Great fight from Mario. Moving on to the American hero. He's formerly known as A10, but I think his new nickname has got to be Jim fucking Miller. I will say Jim fucking Miller and get kicked off of YouTube just because Jim Miller deserves that. He's the man. He says he wants Bruce Buffer to announce him that way at UFC 300. This dude did everything right. He did the thing. He did it all, did it perfectly. He went out there as a 40-year-old, matched up against a pretty good fighter in Gabriel Benitez, and kind of, I don't want to say shit kicked him, but just kind of broke him when you pair the fight with the way that the finish and everything went down. Had the perfect called out, called the people out. God dang, Jim Miller, you are the man. The dude has beaten Lyme disease. He's on a great run. He's 40 years old, defying all the odds. Hey, Manal Cop, this dude's never missed weight. He's 40. Oh, also, he's cut weight and made weight all with Lyme disease when he was really battling Lyme disease. So Manal Cop, again, Manal Cop. Jim Miller makes weight at 40, and he's nowhere near fighting for a title, and you would have been. Sidebar, this is all I'm going to say about Manal Cop. Hey, ONE FC, if you guys want to trade somebody like we did with Askren and DJ, we'll trade you Manal Cop for Stamp Fairtex. Give us Stamp, we'll give you Cop. Cop loves fighting in that part of the world. Maybe he can wear shoes again. He definitely won't miss weight anymore. He'll be fighting at 135. And I just don't know how seriously the dude thinks he's bigger than he is. You look at the way his last fight went with his antics. It was all bad, and he's an explosive athlete. He's a dynamo. He's an incredible fighter, but to lose the first fight with Mateus Nicolau, kind of I don't want to say gifted a rematch, but Nicolau didn't have to take this fight after he already beat you. And then you botch weight, and then you say, well, I fought guys that missed weight, so Nicolau should have fought me when I missed weight. And it's like, dude, this is a rematch of a fight you already lost, bro. Anyway, shame on you, Manal Cop, for missing weight and acting the way you did after. Just not a good look. But we're here to, again, talk about Jim Miller. Sorry I went off on that tangent about Manal Cop. Jim Miller's the man. Give this dude whatever he wants. He should be making Andrei Arlovsky money. And I saw somewhere he made like a couple $100,000 for this, and then I think he got a win bonus. So good for him. And he went out there and his like Dutch kickboxing Muay Thai leg kicks against Benitez, a dude that Javier Mendez said was the best kicker at AKA. Jim Miller went out there and just battered his legs, broke him down. Had good exchanges. Gabriel Benitez has a good straight two right down the pike, and was he did bust up Jim Miller. This wasn't a completely one-way traffic fight. However, again, 70% of the exchanges were won by Miller, and whenever he started having even exchanges, I wouldn't say exchanges he was losing, but whenever he stopped winning the exchanges on the feet, he would just switch to beautifully timed takedowns and have great control and good ground and pound. Jim Miller's the man. This dude, someone somewhere, I forget what I was listening to, said he just refuses to get worse. And it's true. He's not pulling the Tony Ferguson where he's getting older and getting worse, but like he's no worse of an athlete than he really ever was at 40. His cardio's better. The dude used to have 10 minutes worth of, if a third round started and Jim Miller was in that fight, he was like breathing through a straw. And it's just not anymore. Like the dude is winning third rounds. I just don't know. Mind you, this is not at heavyweight. This is at 155. The dude's got like 50 UFC fights. He holds 1 billion records. And here he is. He's still hitting home runs. Like that's what this is. Like this is, yeah, look who he's matched against. And when they give him a younger guy and they give him a little step up, and Alexander Hernandez, he lost. But dude, he also suffered a really bad eye poke in that fight and had to have like surgery on his corneas. He was all over his social media on Instagram talking about how he had a major eye injury. So, for him to have a decently close fight with someone like Alexander Hernandez, who is an incredible athlete and powerful at least, even though he, steps on a banana peel in a large majority of his fights. Miller's the man. I love what he did here. He broke Benitez down. The leg kicks took away all of his power. He even said in the post-fight interview that he expected him to be a very good straight puncher, which Benitez was. He snapped his head back a couple times with, straight twos. Benitez won. His jab was looking great as well. But what's so impressive by Miller is he's 40 and he's able to go between his striking and his wrestling and set up these perfectly timed opportunistic takedowns. His transitions to the back have always been great. The face crank, he must have a hell of a squeeze. And it's also that mixed with the fact that Benitez did kind of get chewed up on the feet, legs kicked to bits, lost all the grappling. Benitez tapped to that face crank and just seemed happy to like, okay, well, I got this one. I got this fight against Jim Miller, and damn it, it's Jim Miller. I can't be too mad at him. But Benitez was like smiling after this fight got finished. Matchmaking for Miller, he called out Paul Felder. Incredible call out, perfect call out. Paul Felder sitting in a suit and tie. It was like an 80s movie of some sort. They pan over to Felder. Felder's a consummate professional. He doesn't, steal any of his light. He says, should I do my triathlon race or should I fight at UFC 300? Who knows? And the UFC will give Paul Felder a fight like that. If Paul Felder picks up the phone and says, hey, UFC, contact Jim Miller. I want him at UFC 300. The fight's going to happen. Paul Felder's also smaller than he ever was, so I don't think this would be a problem at 155 or 170 if Jim Miller's got to make such a turn. And he got a little bit lumped up in this fight. And even though he was landing a lot of the kicks, he was also getting kicked a bunch. He's 40. He's 40. So we'll see if he makes it back for UFC 300. But if it happens, Felder fight's awesome. He also called out Matt Brown. I like Matt Brown. He's like 43. I love Jim Miller. He's 40, but Matt Brown is just so dangerous. I would hate to see him like doing what he did to Diego Sanchez, to Jim Miller, especially Jim Miller is I was, having fun poking at Manel Cop there, but Jim Miller is truly like a 145er. Like we're going to talk about Arnold Allen, who's definitely bigger than Jim Miller. Jim Miller's just a smaller 55er, and I would love to see him fight Darren Elkins. I think if Darren Elkins would move up to 55, he's had fights there before. Let Darren Elkins and Jim Miller fight at UFC 300 as the final prelim before the main card. He'll get the most views there. And what a great way to start the main card. I think that's the fight to make. But just give Jim Miller whatever he wants. I'm surprised there's not a lot of Paddy Pimblett talk, but I'm happy about it. And Paddy Pimblett, I weigh 200 pounds, and Paddy Pimblett's heavier than me right now. So, yeah. A10, Jim fucking Miller, WD-40, whatever you want to call him. He's the man. Great win by him. All right, guys. Moving on to the meme of the night, the LOL moment. We have Magomed Ankalaev knocking out Johnny Walker. I kind of don't know how to feel about this. Like Ankalaev was like a minus 500 favorite going into this, so like we all expected this exact thing to happen. Magomed Ankalaev is a dude that is very, very good at MMA. Like that's his thing. He's just good at stuff. But yes, I care about him, but like I don't. And I almost care more about Johnny Walker only for the fact that whether he absolutely ices somebody or gets absolutely iced himself, like I started off, it's always an LOL meme moment. The dude just like is so bad at stuff. And he's just so huge and so athletic and so dynamic that sometimes being that big works, and it got him all the way here. And when he made it into the UFC, I was doing another podcast at the time and I would scream from the rooftops, this is a guy that would give someone like John Jones lots of problems. He's huge. He's athletic. No, wrong. Chandler Jones might beat Johnny Walker in an MMA fight. I'm just kidding, but any John Jones would absolutely eat this dude alive. And this fight was just like Walker's first round offense. It's like the equivalent of a flashbang grenade, um, where it looks like a lot. God, my ears hurt. I can't see. I'm flustered. What's going on? But like, am I really hurt? No. Okay, cool. I mean, unless you're holding it in your hands, of course. And that's kind of what Johnny Walker is like. You know, he is like a flash bang grenade. It's a lot of movement, a lot of high amplitude things where he's jumping through the air, flying knee, but like not a lot of that shit works. And that shit's gonna work on lower level dudes, but it ain't gonna work on Magomed Ankalaev, a guy that is probably the most stoic human being in the planet. Did you see the pre-fight packages they put for this event? It's like Magomed Ankalaev riding a horse, and there's like a drone shot, and he's in these mountains, up in the mountains in Dagestan, on this lush green valley. It was beautiful. And then they kind of put the mic in his face, and he's just like, "I like horses. I love riding my horse." Next clip. He's just a very, not a lot of words, very stoic, very calm, unflappable in fight. Ankalaev, you can, a guy like Johnny Walker, with all of his antics, all of his, and I did say this in the Sherdog Slack, that as dumb of a fight as this was for Johnny Walker, like that's how he has to beat guys like this, because he's just not technically good enough to, win a fight the Ankalaev way. I don't want to say the right way, but the Ankalaev way. Um, where he's just, his chance to win this fight would be to catch Magomed Ankalaev with a spinning wheel kick into a flying jump knee, or a spinning back fist, into an axe kick. Like that. That's how Walker would have won this fight, and the chances were, I don't know. Ankalaev was a -500 favorite, and you could have made him -1,000, in my opinion. Like he's too buttoned up. He's a great wrestler, and it's, Magomed Ankalaev is a head scratching dude for me, because I think he's actually better than he even performs. I think he could have taken Walker down at any moment. He just jumped in to range doing something weird, taking him down, got the double, cut the angle, taking him down, and then just punched his head off. Like outside of the illegal knee he hit Walker with in their first fight, easily got to the back, easily got his hands, clasped around him, and was landing tons of unanswered punches where Walker is kind of crumbled against the corner of the cage. I thought getting a takedown was going to be the best way to beat Johnny Walker, but at the same time, it's Johnny Walker, and everyone that has beat him or hurt him has just punched him very, very hard, and that's what Ankalaev did. Beautiful counter right hand when Walker kind of overswung this big hook. Walker goes flying. Whenever he gets hit, he just falls like, I mean, if anyone's ever seen this, you can Google it. I went to one on North Miami Beach. It was really cool. A building implosion, where there's an old building that they have to literally blow up, and they put a bunch of dynamite and explosives at the bottom of the building, and then they kind of set them up through the buildings, and they blow it and start at the bottom, and it causes the buildings to crumble. That's exactly what Johnny Walker looks like every time he gets knocked out. Like he just boom, and he's dead. It was very Luke Rockhold, Yoel Romero-esque, where he got pinned against the cage, and then just a violent uppercut, boom, and you could see Johnny Walker grab his nose and kind of go out. And a guy like, these are pro MMA fighters. His nose is probably flattened. And it could have been worse. Ankalaev could have followed up faster, and he could have probably landed more shots, but he figured it would be done. Ankalaev looked great here. Didn't really take any damage. Checked a couple kicks, landed some kicks of his own. Pretty low volume, but it almost seems like he just knew he'd be able to go out there, and if all he had to do was land one clean shot, and this dude would be out. And that's the case. Magomed Ankalaev is probably the best light heavyweight on the planet. Even though I have Alex Pereira in my my light heavyweight pick for the Sherdog Fantasy. I mean, if you told me Magomed Ankalaev was the best light heavyweight on the planet, I wouldn't argue with you. Yeah, some hipsters may say it's Vadim Nemkov. Some people may still think it's Yuri Prochazka. Some people, super hipster might say, no, it's actually Alexander Rakic. Finally, we're kind of having some movement here. This division is insane. The last time this division had a belt defended, like an actual title defense, I believe was in 2021, where my guy Jan Blachowicz went out there and kind of pitched a shutout against Israel Adesanya in a very LOL funny moment. Yeah, that's the last time this belt was defended. So we'll see. Ankalaev has already fought for the vacant title once to a draw with, again, Jan Blachowicz, who's another guy that has an argument of possibly being the best light heavyweight on the planet. If you asked him who it was, he'd say him. He'd say it was himself. I think for Ankalaev, he should probably fight for a title. I just don't know. Glover Teixeira was tweeting out, great performance. My team wants to fight your team. And then Alex Pereira posted on his social media him getting in Jamal Hill's face during the Glover fight when he was in Glover's corner. I'm just not sure if I did see Jamal, because Jamal Hill goes to every single UFC fight. He's got like 10 kids. I don't know how he has the time for it. Someone's missing out on something probably. That's not my business though. But if you ask his brother would probably agree with that. Either way, he also could be 400 pounds, but he did look slimmer in the audience during this fight, and maybe he was there because he wants to see the light heavyweight picture. I don't know. But for Ankalaev, it just depends on what Alex Pereira wants to do next. I think Ankalaev is a worse fight for Pereira than Jamal Hill. I think Jamal Hill. No, Ankalaev is still more dangerous than Jamal Hill. I just think Ankalaev is an all-around better fighter than Jamal Hill. So I could see Alex Pereira looking for a fight like that. Number one, because Jamal Hill did kind of plaster Glover in Glover's last retirement fight, and him and Glover are basically family. And I think it's the easier fight for him. Jamal Hill is very dangerous. He's a good puncher. He's a great athlete. Does set up his shots well, but I think compared to Ankalaev can do all the same things. He doesn't make as many mistakes as Jamal Hill. And even though they both got armbarred and triangle elbowed by Paul Craig for Hill and armbarred by Paul Craig for Ankalaev, I still think Ankalaev is the more dangerous fight. And I think Pereira would want more time. So it's up in the air. If he doesn't fight for a title, I could see, even if he's not in the next title fight, I should say, I could still see him holding out and waiting for a title fight. If not, maybe he gets booked with someone like Roundtree. Not a good fight for Roundtree. Roundtree can totally strike with Magomed Ankalaev, but he cannot wrestle with him. But no, Ankalaev might decide to strike with a dude like Roundtree. Great performance by Ankalaev. When you're a 5-1 favorite, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to flatline Johnny Walker. And for Johnny Walker, I don't know. He can fight the loser of Yuri Prochazka and Alexander Rakic, and I kind of think it's probably going to be Yuri. Rakic just he's boring, but he knows how to win fights, and he's huge, and whatever. I could see Johnny Walker fighting the loser of that, and I think him and Yuri would be so much fun. More than likely, Johnny Walker will get LOL'd again. He will be another meme. But it's Johnny Walker. He as like weird and annoying for me, at least. As weird his whole persona outside of the cage. One thing I will say that I found funny was in the Sherdog Slack, we were saying that hey, someone needs to be briefing Johnny Walker to tell him, hey, even though you're still in the desert, if they ask you where you are, say Las Vegas. Also, too, Mark Goddard, Magomed Ankalaev landing an unintentional nut shot on Johnny Walker and getting a hard warning. Like, Mark Goddard, you can't bring last fights penalties into this new fight. And it was funny. He was giving it was it was a hard nut shot, but it's unintentional. Like, hey, please don't do it again. Uh, but like Mark Goddard brought in the last fight's penalties into this fight. I thought that was funny too. Great win by Magomed Ankalaev. We're gonna move on to a pretty good pay-per-view here in just a second. UFC Vegas 87, was it 87 or 84? Whatever it was. Ankalaev Walker. That was pretty dope. Fun card. And a decent way to kick off 2024. Also, too, guys, just in case if you need to add something to a trivia, remember this: Joshua Van got the first finish of 2024. So at the end of the year, when there's some weird trivia, got that from me. We're gonna go hop right into UFC 297. I've handpicked some fights. We're gonna talk about 3 of them. The 3 fights I picked are maybe fights that you guys would be surprised about, maybe not, but I think they're going to be the best fights on the card. That's why we're here to talk about them. Titles mean a lot, but I think there's a couple fights on here that mean more than some of the title fights, especially if you're a true MMA fan. You have a good idea of what's going on in the world, what's going on in MMA, and we're going to hop right into the featherweights. Arnold Allen versus Evloev. Great fight here. Evloev, minus 166 favorite. Arnold Allen is the slight underdog, coming in at +1. Movsar, the former M1 Global bantamweight champion over in Russia, has, just done great in the UFC. He's 17-0. Arnold Allen is a guy that is coming off of a loss to Max Holloway. Looked pretty good. Did get dropped when he did try to go for it in the 5th round. That's something I don't think is being talked about, but has looked good. He's a guy that I don't think has fought often enough. There was, he's fighting twice a year, and a guy that's as good as him, and at his age, I feel like he should be fighting more. He's 29 years old. He's coming off of that decision loss to Max Holloway, where he looked okay. But whenever he turned it up, Max turned it up a little bit more and just kind of outpunched him, outstruck him, did what Max Holloway does. But that is Max Holloway, and he's one of the greatest MMA fighters to ever exist. I don't even think there's a way to argue that. Probably top 20, top 15. He's Max Holloway. He's incredible. Prior to that, he had that weird win against Calvin Kattar. Was that knee injury where the round 1 was pretty close, and then second round starts, Kattar blew his knee up, and I think he went into that fight injured. Before that, I think were his 2 most impressive performances. That knockout of Dan Hooker, where Dan Hooker, not the smartest thing for him to do as a slower, large guy, went back down to featherweight and just got pieced up and crushed by Arnold Allen. He had a couple moments in the first round, but he just lost a brawl. He went out there to try to brawl with Arnold Allen, and Arnold Allen welcomed it and finished him, punches and elbows. And the decision went to Sadiq Youssef. Sadiq Youssef's a pretty good fighter, went out there and had a war with Edson Barbosa. I think it wasn't talked about enough for the Sherdog fight of the year. That was a great fight by Barbosa and Sadiq Youssef. And yeah, Arnold Allen's a good dude. He's probably not the best athlete in the division. He's huge. He hits hard. He can be a little bit low volume, and I think he's recently realized, yes, he didn't have tons of success with it against Max Holloway, but he did land shots on Max Holloway. It's just Max Holloway. Max Holloway wins a lot of brawls. And then he had great success letting his hands go against Hooker. So maybe I'm gonna have to change my note about him on that. But he's still a guy that can be lower output. He's got great striking, good kicks, great punching game. He can switch things up. Evloev, on the other hand, and Arnold is a pretty decent, grappler, BJJ practitioner. He can kind of do it all. He does the MMA thing. He's a MMA native. That's his game. He's just a good MMA fighter. Evloev, you could kind of say the same thing about him. 17-0, but it's not a It's not a Shavkat Rakhmonov 17-0, but it could be argued that he's fighting better people in a better division. I think Evloev being a little bit smaller, he had a very, I wouldn't say a very close fight, but he had a good fight with Diego Lopez, and I think that is showing, especially the way Diego Lopez has looked since then with that flying triangle of Gavin Tucker, and then the way he looked his last time out. I think that win definitely means more now than it did when Diego Lopez just kind of came into the UFC. Decision win against Dan Ige, decision win against Hakeem Dawodu, decision win against Nick Lentz. His fight with Enrique Barzola, that's a good win. Enrique Barzola is good. And then his fight with Nick Lentz, Mike Grundy. Mike Grundy, he's a wrestler. He's a big dude. That's his thing. He's even a wrestling coach over in Europe. And Mike Grundy was able to get takedowns on Evloev, but Evloev's scrambling game, that's like, and also with Diego Lopez, like the dude can wrestle and scramble his ass off, even though he is a smaller dude for 145. He's not a brick shithouse. He's not like Michael Chandler, but he's built well. He has good cardio, good grappling, good striking. I think he uses more striking tools than someone like Arnold Allen. He will kind of just do a little bit more, but I think Arnold Allen is probably the bigger puncher out of the two. Odds make sense. Arnold Allen is coming off of a loss. Evloev is 17-0, and former champion from a good organization. He's also a Russian dude, and those dudes do get a lot of hype. In this fight, if Arnold Allen can defend some takedowns and up his volume, if Arnold Allen is out here throwing 60, 80 strikes around, he can easily win this round. That's a lot of volume for someone like Arnold Allen. But if he goes out there and, again, throws 60 or 80 strikes per round, he could out-volume Evloev. I just don't know. Evloev is a guy that knows how to win fights. I think if he wants to really out-wrestle Arnold Allen, he can do it. And I think if he wants to outstrike him, he probably can too. But I think that's going to be the more risky way to do it. I think Evloev wins a close, full-out MMA fight. I think he mixes his wrestling with his striking, times the takedowns. Anytime striking exchanges become even, like I said about Jim Miller previously, he's going to start incorporating his wrestling. If he can outstrike Arnold Allen, he will cruise and outstrike him the whole fight. But if the second Arnold Allen starts having moments, I think he mixes in his grappling. I think Evloev is just... Arnold Allen can make this fight really tough for him, but I think Evloev is just a better fighter all around. I think he has more skills. I think he brings more to the table. It's Movsar Evloev for me. -166. It's a tough fight to call, but it's going to be such a good fight. Both of these guys are super talented, and that's why I'm talking about it. They're great. I told you guys at the beginning of this little preview that I was going to pick 3 of the funnest fights. I really did want to talk about Jourdain and Woodson, but I had to skip over them. No, we are not talking about Mayra Bueno Silva versus Raquel Pennington. Keith and Ben do a show where they talk about all the fights. If you're listening to that show, if you listen to this show, you probably listen to that show. I can't speak. But if not, go check them out because they talk about all the fights. I unfortunately do not. I pick the most fun ones and I talk about those. I think probably the second most fun fight on this card, the battle of the pretty cool nicknames, the Action Man versus Power Bar. We got Chris Curtis versus Marc-Andre Barriault. These dudes don't know how to have a fun fight. Whether they win, lose, or draw, they are both fantastic fighters, fantastically fun fighters. Odds on this fight, Chris Curtis, he's a -166 favorite. Marc-Andre Barriault is the +140 underdog. It's as I'm recording this, I have everything written down. I have the odds written down, everything, all my notes and stuff here. and I'm reading the odds off, and I actually had to pause the recording and go to the UFC website to make sure I had the raw odds right. They're the exact same odds as the Arnold and Movsar Evloev fight. This is a damn good fight. Both of these guys are flawed in a way, but that's what makes them fun. Marc-Andre Barriault, power bar. His name, that's exactly him. He's definitely a guy that's going to come into this fight a little bit bigger than Chris Curtis. And he's a dude that just wants to really mix in. He's a good kicker, got good leg kicks, decent boxing, decent with his hands. But he is much more of like, let's have a high-paced MMA fight. I'm going to incorporate my grappling here. I'm going to strike with you when I want to strike with you. I'm going to push you against a cage. I'm going to rinse and repeat takedowns. I'm going to fight you in a washing machine, in a dryer. Like, it's just this consistent offense, consistent pressure. That's my game. I'm going to get on. I'm in fifth gear the whole time. The dude's fifth gear, rev limiter, maxed out, and he's just going. That's his game. Chris Curtis, on the other hand, he is much more of a, he's much more of a crafty puncher, and he's low key one of the more crafty punchers in this whole division. And what I mean by that is he sets up his boxing really well. He's got this really good body punching, this really good like upward shovel hook that he throws. He'll crush people to the body, and then he'll go upstairs with this big shovel hook that he likes to throw. He's got pretty decent defense. It's that shoulder rolling Bobby Green-esque style in a way. He's also very similar to his main training partner Sean Strickland in the way that they defend punches. And it might not be the best visually for an MMA fight where a judge is like, oh, that punch hit him on the shoulder and he had to reset and he kind of had to step back, where like in a boxing match, a boxing judge may notice his defense in a different way. But this is MMA. Chris Curtis is a guy that and both of these dudes are 100% overachievers in my opinion. Chris Curtis was a dude that retired twice in one night in the PFL, and it's going to be his story every time we talk about him, where he lost to Magomed Karamov, and then he basically took a phone call from dropping his bags off in the airport, and they're like, hey, can you turn around and fight Ray Cooper? And he got knocked out. And he went and fought like in XMMA, fought in IFF, fought in Fierce FC, fought in XMMA again. And then in 2021, he got a call and was like, hey, do you want to fight Phil Hawes? And he's like, sure, I'll fight Phil Hawes. And he goes and knocks him out. Oh, you want to fight Brendan Allen in 2 months? No, in 1 month. He knocked out Phil Hawes on November 6th of 21, and then went out there and knocked out Brendan Allen on December 4th of 21. And then he went out there and defended all the takedowns to Adolfo Vieira and kind of pieced him up on the feet. And we were all like, man, Chris Curtis up a weight class. His boxing looks good. He's hitting people. He's hurting people. And then he went out there and had that fight with Jack Hermanson where he kind of just followed him around. He had some trouble with the footwork and couldn't cut him off. And he kind of got upset at Jack Hermanson. It wasn't a great look for him. Chris Curtis totally he made up for that Jack Hermanson fight when he went out there and knocked out Joaquin Buckley. And then he had that really close fight with Kelvin Gastelum where he got headbutted by Kelvin Gastelum and was hurt with a clash of heads, but then came to win the rest of the round. I kind of think it's not a robbery, it's a close fight, but he looked good against Kelvin Gastelum. I kind of think he won the fight, especially if that headbutt was scored the way it was supposed to be. And then the no contest clash of heads with Nasruddin Imavov, a dude that is so low in stature and likes to be in the pocket and kind of bob and weave like Chris Curtis does. I think he's going to be just, these weird head clashes are just going to be something that happens to him, unfortunately, and that just kind of sucks. Marc-Andre Barriault, he's coming off of a couple good wins. He got sparked out right away in like 15 seconds versus Chidi and Jokwani. He beat Dolce Longambula before that, knocked out, and he really beat the shit out of Abu Azaitar. Abu Azaitar probably shouldn't be in the UFC and probably shouldn't have been in the UFC, but he beat the shit out of him for 3 rounds and then finally finished him in the third. Guillotine Jordan Wright, that makes sense. His loss to Anthony Hernandez, that's Fluffy Hernandez. Fluffy Hernandez just does everything that Marc-Andre Barriault does, but just better. Like he hits harder. He's even more of a tenacious grappler, and he's got better BJJ. And he was just like literally. I mean, I thought Marc-Andre Barriault was going to have like a spinal injury after that fight. He got slammed on top of his head like multiple times. You want to talk about a fight in a washing machine? Anthony Hernandez threw him in a washing machine with a brick and told him, "Survive, good luck," because he, and then triangled him. Anthony Hernandez, Fluffy, kind of kicked the shit out of him, but he's coming off of 2 good wins. Beat Eric Anders in a fight that Eric Anders likes to have as well, and then he knocked out Julian Marquez in kind of a brawl after getting touched up and hurt. This is a fight where if Chris Curtis can defend the takedowns like he did against Rodolfo Vieira, he could totally win this fight. But if Chris Curtis is a guy that can get frustrated in fights. We've seen him get frustrated against Jack Hermanson. This fight, I think, is all it's if the fight happens in the middle of the cage and 70% of it is boxing and 30% of it is Chris Curtis defending takedowns, Chris Curtis wins this fight. If it is 70% of him defending takedowns and 30% boxing in the middle of the cage, Marc-Andre Barriault wins this fight. Chris Curtis is ranked number 13 in the world right now. Marc-Andre Barriault is unranked. They're giving him a fun fight because this is in Canada. He is a Canadian, I believe Quebec native, but he's currently down in Florida. I'm going to go with Chris Curtis. And it's kind of just because it's a 3-round fight. He seems to be a guy that's lower volume, but once he kind of figures things out, he can start going, and he has good takedown defense, and he can be a good wrestler in himself, especially if you get hurt in front of him. He has pretty good ground and pound. Give me Chris Curtis to defend takedowns for 1 round and probably drop the 2nd round and then start hurting Marc-Andre Barriault. Chris Curtis is a dude that if he hurts you once, there's not many fights that he loses where he doesn't start hurting people. And Marc-Andre Barriault is not the most durable dude. He's not Kelvin Gastelum. If he goes out there and has the same fight he did with Kelvin Gastelum, he's going to win. Chris Curtis, I think he punishes Marc-Andre Barriault for the last 2 rounds of this fight, potentially knocking him out in the 3rd. Main event. We made it. We're here to talk about, and what we're all really here for, Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. We have Sean Strickland coming in as the slight favorite, -130. Du Plessis coming in at +110. These past 3 fights I picked for you guys are damn near dead even odds, especially the main event. And then the 2 previous literally are -166 and +140. Like there's a reason why I'm talking about these fights. They're all super close, super highly competitive fights. Sorry, Mike Malott, but ice a couple more dudes and maybe I'll be talking about you, but I got my eye on you for right now. Sean Strickland, Dricus du Plessis. This is the most middleweight title fight ever. And this is probably the most excited I've been about a middleweight title fight. I don't know, since like Yoel Romero fought Robert Whittaker. Kind of, I guess I can say this. I'm kind of glad Adesanya's middleweight reign for now is over. Yes, his last win was really fun against Alex Pereira, and his fight with Alex Pereira prior to that was really fun as well. But I think that might be a little more Alex Pereira than Israel Adesanya, because Israel Adesanya, when he wins fights the way he wants to, they look like the Marvin Vettori rematch or the Jared Cannonier fight. And yeah, these guys are they don't have fights like that. Especially Dricus du Plessis, and Dricus du Plessis is going to have a brawl with anyone who wants it. And Sean Strickland, he's a dude that is proving me and most people wrong. The guy was my fighter of the year. And it's funny because in 2023, he took a short notice fight up a weight class against Nasruddin Imavov and cleanly beat his ass, and then fought the ultimate fraud check. Abu Sufyan Magomedov, the dude, we talk about there was a couple, I think might have been a fraud check this past weekend. But Abus, this dude may be a fraud. But then comes in and pitches a shutout and literally just shit kicks Israel Adesanya. Was it a bad night from Israel Adesanya? Based on the odds of this fight and the way that people were talking, Israel Adesanya should have beat Sean Strickland on his worst night, but that is not what happened. Sean Strickland went out there, and I watched the fight again the other night, and yeah, just broke Izzy mentally. Very interesting. And speaking of a dude that's breaking people, even if you think someone like Robert Whitaker he's not broken, but he's cracked and taped together, Dricus du Plessis went out there and shit kicked Robert Whitaker. Went out there, got up, got taken down, got up in incredible. We'll just say this now: Dricus du Plessis is built like the Pokemon Geodude. Like he is just fucking like he's got big legs, but his upper body is just big. He's got big long arms, big huge chest. Like his back is huge. Like like his ribs and torso are really wide. He's just giant, and he hits very hard. Ask Robert Whitaker. Ask anyone he's fought. The dude cracks. Great. I don't want to say great wrestling, but good. I mean, he's got the best ground and pound in this division, Dricus. I mean, his ground and pound is beyond lethal. The way he sliced through Robert Whitaker's guard and just punched his head off was fucking impressive. His stoppage over Darren, it's Dricus du Plessis such a strange dude because like he's got that Brian Ortega in him where like he will have even fights with anyone, even outside of the top 15, until they're no longer even, and then he's just fucking killing you. Like you look at the Trevin Giles fight, like it's Trevin Giles. Trevin Giles was like piecing him up before the second round started, and then all of a sudden, like the tide switched, and Trevin Giles was just dead. But then he has this like decision with Brad Tavares, which is weird. The fight with Darren Till, like a completely washed and fried Darren Till, is going out there and having success against him. But then he starts winning some exchanges. Then he gets a takedown. Then he gets a face crank. All the way up through Robert Whitaker. Like he had the same fight he did with Trevin Giles as he did with Robert Whitaker. Like it's or the same fight with Darren Till. Like it's super weird. What they're both good at. Strickland is a great combination puncher, pretty defensively sound, besides the Alex Pereira fight, but that's Alex Pereira. He is a literal once in a lifetime talent, especially with that left hook. I mean, the dude has like 12 pro MMA fights, and he's a double champion in 2 different divisions and was also a Glory Kickboxing double champion. It's Alex Pereira. Yeah, everyone's gonna lose to him. Where I really started to look at Sean Strickland and really think, okay, this dude's gonna be a problem, was his Uriah Hall fight, where he was just he just wrecked Uriah Hall. He absolutely wrecked him. And then he had that split decision with Jack Hermanson, which like weird, whatever. Gets knocked out by Alex Pereira, and then has I think he got shafted by Jared Cannonier. Like Jared Cannonier was landing hard body shots on him, but I mean, that is where Strickland made his change, where he said, man, I'm going to have close fights with these dudes. But Jared Cannonier is arguably the hardest puncher at 185. And at 185, Strickland is very durable. With Pereira no longer being at 85, I feel pretty good about saying Cannonier is probably the hardest puncher there. Shit, look what Cannonier just did to Marvin Vettori in his last fight. About killed him like 15 times. Sean was able to roll punches there. He did take some damage from Jared Cannonier, but that's where he said, hey, you know what? I feel like I've been hitting like a bitch. I feel like I've been fighting like a bitch. Let me go out there and really put my foot down and start throwing harder shots at people. And look what he did to Adesanya. Went out there with his clean 1-2, ducked the big hook, and just stayed in the pocket and stayed tight. He checked checked a large majority of Adesanya's kicks. He was catching Adesanya's kicks and running him into the cage. landing his shots there and then getting out. Strickland is really good at fighting fights in his terms. If you look through his whole entire middleweight run, like he had his fight with everybody. Duplessis is a guy that the dude fights like a Beyblade. You ever see the kids' toy, the show where they fucking just spin him and they just fucking go crazy? That's how he fights. He fights like he's in a tornado that is just aimed at you over and over again. He will bash himself against you to see who breaks first. He is a dude that is willing to, hey, let's, he's got that Brian Ortega in him. He also has that Justin Gaethje in him. We're like, let's just both, put our hands over the furnace and just see who can stay here the longest. I can be burnt, but I can take more of this than you can. So we'll see if he is just going to continuously run into Sean Strickland. That's going to be his best way to win this fight, because Sean Strickland is not the biggest dude in this division. Sean Strickland comes from, I don't know if it's the best camp in MMA, but with Eric Nixick there, it damn well might be the best camp in MMA. If it's not the best camp in MMA, he's got the best training partners. The dude's main training partners for this camp: Chris Curtis, Johnny Eblin, Magomed Ankalaev. Those are his three main training partners. I don't know who Duplessis brought in, but even if you remove Chris Curtis from this picture, it's going to be very, very hard to find two training partners to prepare you for a middleweight title fight than Magomed Ankalaev and Johnny Eblin. Sean Strickland looks to be in amazing shape. I'm wondering where's his head's at. He almost fought Duplessis like a month ago in the crowd. He broke down crying on the Theo Vaughn thing. I think Duplessis has actually been the first person to get in Sean Strickland's head. Maybe it's because Sean Strickland's making a little bit more money. Maybe he's grown soft, or maybe this will, push him to do great things. I think Duplessis hits hard enough. He definitely hits hard enough to hurt Strickland on the feet and then get on top of him and finish him with ground and pound. He's a good enough wrestler to, get takedowns. Strickland is a very good scrambler. He's got very underrated takedown defense. I mean, he's been grappling with Magomed Ankalaev, and they both have high things to say about each other. What worries me, and what I look at this fight being so close and both of them being so good at what they do, I think Strickland's power is starting to be underrated. His jab is really good. His straight punching, I mean, he's the best cross in the game, best jab in the game. Like, it's perfect. He throws it with no tell. Duplessis is probably going to win the first and second round of this fight just by going out there and running himself into Strickland. But if you go back to Duplessis' prior fights outside of the UFC, in EFC, this is back in 2014, he lost in the third round via guillotine. He got choked to sleep. Went on a bunch of crazy win streak in KSW, got knocked out by Roberto Soldi in the third round as well. All of these fights, like against Darren Till, he started a flag. If he's not finishing Sean Strickland in the first two rounds, I have to take the dude that's more defensively sound. And whoever's moving forward in this fight's going to win. Will Strickland be able to stop Duplessis' forward pressure with just a jab? Will it take a little bit more? Duplessis is a dude that you could jab him 100 times. Will he be deterred by that? I don't know. Strickland is just the more sound guy. Duplessis, if you match all their games up against each other, I think the only thing that Duplessis is better at than Strickland is ground and pound. I think his top control is better and his ground and pound is better. But I don't think Duplessis' takedown game is good enough to consistently, and his scrambling game is consistently going to be good enough to keep Strickland down. Strickland has probably the best vision in this division. Yes, he did get knocked out by Alex Pereira again. Alex Pereira is an anomaly. Look at the way he's ducking under those wide hooks from Adesanya in the pocket. That's what Duplessis does too. He winds up those big hooks. If he hits you, it hurts. Strickland's a dude that's full of cardio. He will up the strike count on people. I think he's just going to win the last 3 rounds of this fight. And what if du Plessis gets tired? If you get tired in front of Strickland in the 5th round of a fight, especially a fight that he's lost a couple rounds on, expect Strickland to up the volume, turn his cardio on. This is in Canada. This is not at some crazy elevation like Mexico City. Give me Strickland to cleanly win the 5th round and have 4 close ones where he wins the last, he wins the last 3 rounds of this fight. Du Plessis wins the first 2, and the 5th round is a clear one for Strickland. I think once the it's like a snowball down a hill where it's getting increasingly faster and it's getting increasingly bigger. But we'll see if du Plessis is a literal hand grenade. If he blows up and it kills Strickland in the process, it could happen quickly. Give me Strickland to win not a nip tuck fight, a crazy fight for 2 rounds, and then a Sean Strickland fight for 3. Just over an hour. Some really fun fights. Pretty good card coming up next week as well. I'll be back next week. We'll recap this. We'll talk about some more fights. Till then, that's the sign. Check the kick. Sherdog.com is a website. I'm Devin. Thank you for tuning in.